A very good morning, and we are going to talk on an important subject today. It is on safety in glass handling. So let me open the topic with the background. In the picture what you can see is there is a breakage of glass when it is stored, and actually there is a two angle of this problem. One is that at the time of breakage, the kind of hazard, the potential hazard it poses, and after the breakage you can see the spilled cullets over that place, making a big hazardous condition or situation in which people can slip, trip and fall and make an injury. And if you really see the glass handling, then there are four ways and means of it is handled. One, basically people they handle the glass manually, and there is a methodology of handling it mechanically by using a lot of mechanical equipments. And another way of common handling of glass is lifting and moving of big glasses using UOT cranes. And another material handling equipment, a common material handling equipment like forklift truck, is used for glass in bundles. So this is the ways in which different ways in which glass is handled. And when we go about loading and unloading of glass for transportation, in fact it has to be loaded into the truck, and this is also turned out to be a hazardous operation, where in which the glass packed in crates can fall onto a person when the person is inside a kind of a confined space in the truck. And in containers also, it's again a confined space where you load the glass or unload it also from what it is coming from the container. This also poses a lot of hazardous situation in the operations. Now coming to transportation of glass, the packed glass on roads using truck, this is also a hazardous operation where in which the condition of our roads and the truck can topple and the people go near to it to retrieve, or else at the time of toppling, or else the accident happens. At that point of time it can hurt anybody. So these are all some important topics where in which the safety of handling glass coming into picture. Now this picture shows what you can see is a kind of an injury, a cut injury, basically when the human body part, basically hands, legs or whatever it may be, getting exposed to the sharp edges of glass. So the cut injury caused by glass is it's actually very dangerous. It can go deep cut also based on the weight and the size of the glass. So basically the consequence of a kind of an unsafe condition, act and an accident is most prominently will result into a kind of cut injuries to human beings, which is a great concern in this field, and that is why the importance or the prominence of glass handling with care and safety, the topic coming and it takes a lot of relevance. Now I am going to talk about the glass handling as such has got different domains. One is the storage part. Basically after the production of glass it needs to be stored at some place. Then you need to handle while storing and to move in between the stores from one place to another place. And then comes safety in loading and unloading, because for the dispatches it has to be loaded into trucks. Then safety in transportation, while you transport the glass, what kind of precautions you need to take care. And other two topics which are complementary to this domains of glass handling. One is it's a very bigger topic, risk assessment, but specific to glass handling, what is the relevance of risk assessment we need to talk. And then personal protective equipment. Okay, in order to protect a person from injury, you need to basically based on the hierarchy of controls, you need to talk about elimination, substitution and lot of engineering controls, and then training, administrative control. But in glass handling, what is very important is to select and make the people to wear a minimum or else what is mandated, what is adequate personal protective equipments. At the worst case, as a last option of defense, it should protect or else mitigate or reduce the the level of injury or the consequences or the gravity of the injury for the people who are handling the glass. Now, let us talk about the first, the safety in glass storage. Okay, generally wherever you go to a glass manufacturing industry or else a processing industry, you will see, you will get to see a place where glass is stored. Okay. So, basically glass has to be stored in dry condition on its edge. This is the common practice, and short edge or long edge is dependent on size, substance and availability of the space. So, you can see big warehouses where you have ample amount of space to storage it safe, and there are small players where space is a constraint, and they're basically because of the space constraint, a lot of haphazard storage conditions coming into place. And the four factors what we need to consider, the glass should not be in contact with any substance that is harder than itself. That creates, it actually augments the breakage of glass. And the angle of inclination or lean of the glass should be 3 degrees from the vertical on static racks. The minimum is 3, it can be 3 to 5 like that, what we call it as. And glass stored on its edge should be supported as evenly as possible. If uneven surface is there, then that also creates an unsafe situation. The flooring should be of adequate strength to support the weight of the stack. So this is what the 4 factors which need to be considered. Now here you can really see what it is right angle of storage and what is wrong. The wrong angle of storage, you can really predict that there is all chances that it can slip, slide and then create a kind of an unsafe condition. And now what are the different types of storages, what is available? As a common accepted practice, basically wall racks is one common method. It's a simple method, not recommended for a large volume, but when larger quantities are to be stored against wall, single-sided freestanding racks to be used to avoid imposed loading on the wall. And there is something called as end caps. It's you properly pack the glass with some nails and steel strapping, and then multiple packs also you bind it and then fit it to a stabilizer legs and add stability. This is some different ways of storage of glass. So basically what it is discussed here is we need to have a methodology of stacking or storing the glass, which is very important for the safety. We can see the end caps. Here in the picture you can see a single pack which will be very based on the stability. What you can see, single pack will not be that much stable. Then when it is kept two packs and then bundled with a steel strap and all, it is safe. Or else you have to, if you are keeping a single strap, then it has to be with the support thing what it is shown in this picture. And now another types of storage is like tossed or bin racks. This means storing small quantities. This is the best one. And construction should include cross bracing along the length of the rack, and each must be firmly secured to the floor and or to the ceiling. So this is the way, in the picture it is very clear. So this is the way small quantities of glass what we can store. And then glass supporting on frame. So this is the way of racks used in pairs, aligned and suitably spaced, and based on the required width of the glass. It's very clear in the picture how at both the sides on a frame glass is stored with an angle of inclination, safe angle of inclination. And there is something called as A-frame, which is also very common in storage as well as transportation. So it's a kind of it has got a shape of an A-frame, and with a cast iron or fabricated angle iron. Then both the sides we can store the glass. Now when glass stored at sites, there it is important to have some checkpoints to be followed. So I can explain these checkpoints, what it is important and what it is need to be followed. So basically we need to check whether the glass is at ground level or not, and floor loadings of the buildings or platform sufficient to take the weight. This is what is very important, and it is necessary to distribute the weight of glass over the floor. Then the access sufficient to allow delivery of vehicle onto the site. So this needs to be checked. At the time of maneuvering to load into the vehicle or unload from the vehicle, there can be accidents happen. Then what type of racking will be required to hold the glass? Is the ground suitable to erect that kind of racks? And what means of handling are available to unload the glass from the truck to the racking area? Okay. Then is it of sufficient capacity, whether it is a crane or whatever it may be? Is the area where the glass is to be stored secure and safe from accidental damage by other contractors on the sites? And will it present a hazard to anyone not associated directed with this work? And can dry storage condition be provided? So these are all the some checkpoints which we need to take care when glass is stored at a site. And now when glass is stored, there are 4 ways with which a glass can fall and then create an unsafe condition. So in the first picture, what you can see is it is fall sideways, and another picture you can see the person how he is standing, and the glass can fall onto him, so that is fall forward, and he is very much in the glass falling zone. And there is something called as fall by slipping. Glass just slips and then falls. And another way of glass falling is, when glass is lifted and the person is on beneath the glass can fall from the top by the vacuum failure and kind of situations. So this is what the important thing, and every place where glass is stored, there is what we call it as glass falling zone. So people have to be away, or they should not be inside in the glass falling zone. And this is so having said about the warehouse and the ways and means and methodology to safely store glass and handle the glass safely in the warehouses. I would like to share few best practices which is used in some warehouses where glass is being stored. Basically, there is something called a storage limit. You will keep the racks and the runner woods will be there. So basically, there has to be a limit for the storage. You cannot keep empty number of glass and then keep on storing it. And when it is crates are stored, so there is something called as pyramidal stacking. That means if you are storing on 2 tiers, so the upper tier should be the quantity what it is kept, it should be lesser than the base tower. So that's a pyramidal stacking. Then wherever we have broken glass in the warehouse, it needs to be identified, and angle of stacking, which is very, very important, and there should be some means of checking it and ensuring it, angle of stacking is more than 3 degree. And when the truck comes and goes, there will be a pit actually. So that pit needs to be closed. There should not be any gaps. And wherever somebody going on top of the truck or at certain height people are working, there should be fall prevention or protection systems should be available. And truck driver and glass, the glass is always associated with people who are carrying it on the roads, and then they come to our warehouses. So there should be some minimum safety information need to be passed on to the truck drivers. And when on the next point is that whenever we move glass on shovel, so it needs to be secured, even on trolley also when glass is moved. Glass should be moved with the minimum amount of or basic amount of securing. And then any lifting equipment that is used to handle glass, it should have the safe working load known and respected. And there is something called as blind spot in warehouses where you store glass in between the glass where people pass or the forklift pass or something like that. There can be a lot of blind corners available. So all these blind corners should be identified, and they should be there should be convex mirror fitted into that particular area, and all the drivers, people who are working in that area, they should be authorized, and there should be minimum speed limits for any material handling equipment that is moved inside the warehouse where you handle the glass. Moving on, okay, there are some even if we carry glass on forklift, it should in the night and all, it should be forklift, the headlight should be on, and hazardous area, there should be good amount of illumination and lighting in the glass warehouses. It's an important point, and walkways should be isolated from the storages, otherwise people walk and their body is exposed to the sharp edges of glass, or sideways some glass can break and then fall. That sharp edges will get exposed to the people who are walking. And any wood and glass is commonly found in any kind of warehouses. So wood cutting machine, it needs to be properly guarded, and then authorized people only should be doing it. Then glass, when you handle it in EOT crane and all, the slings are used, a lot of slings are used. So we get to know a lot of about unsafe conditions where people, their fingers are getting entangled in between the sling and the glass bundles or glass crates. So that need to be avoided, not to handle the slings with fingers. And the glass falling zone, there should be constant or frequent sensitization programs on glass falling zone. People should be discouraged to be there moving or working in the glass falling zone. And basically wheel choker for the trucks, and then minimum any 450 mm gap is required between the gaps, and there should be a pre-operation checklist for all the equipments that is used for glass handling, and dedicated pedestrian walkways, and the C device finger locking. So these are all different ways and means of safety practices that is being implemented in warehouses.